All right. So what you're doing, it's still helpful. It'll still build you familiarity with the figure. In fact, I've recommended it to people before. But it's more about what you're trying to pay attention to. So like you are what it looks like is you're still thinking about form. You have the general idea down, but uh I think you're putting too much focus in the wrong area. And what I mean by that is, so you have like your contour. So you have the outline of the bicep. So you're doing something like this, where you're like tracing around the outside, which is fine. Um, but then you're just kind of like drawing lines around it like this. Um, and this isn't helping you at all because you're, again, the point of an exercise like this isn't to just grab the outline and then put little circles around it. These little circles that we're doing, we're purposely trying to find what direction this shape is going in. So like when we make this a cylinder, um, these lines aren't just like decorations to make it like look cooler. The lines are trying to find out what direction in space they're going. So, like with the earlier references that I showed you, like these midsection lines, it's just detailing where in space they're going. Because, like, again, if you were to take this same shape, like, let me just scribble this out. Like, if we were to take this same shape, you can't just like do this and like draw circles because then what you're telling the viewer, if this crescent is going down in the opposite direction, you're telling them that it's being smushed in the center of the cylinder and then fanning out by having that shape incorrect. You're saying the midsection is being like pressed or smushed upward. Um, so when we're adding these lines, we're doing it to try and tell us what direction the shape is going in. And in this example, you can see like as we go further down and as the head juts out and we're looking at it from a more centered, foreshortened view, uh, that curve is going to go down more dramatically. And then you can see in the middle of the cylinder, because again, if we were to just look at this as if it were a flat shape, where the center line is, because we're looking at it head on, the center line is going to drop lower. So if we were to turn this into a cylinder, like that center line is going to be lower. And again, you can see how sloppy I'm being doing this because again, the point isn't trying to make something pretty, it's trying to get down the raw information. And of course, like opposite, like as we go up, now we can see that center line is, more towards the center of the actual shape. And if this was going in like an opposite direction, so like let's say we had um like the butt of the cylinder, we could see like okay, instead of it doing this shape, it's doing this shape, and now it's going up. So with this center line, it's telling us again how head on are we looking at the object, and then like how high up it is, and what direction it's going in. So with that in mind, it might be helpful to let's delete this. It might be helpful to, instead of jumping right into a trace, looking at the bicep and being like, all right, if this is a cylinder that I'm going to flesh out, like, what direction is it going in? And you don't even need to get it right. Uh, you just need to consider it. So I would probably do something like this. See, I'm just trying to get it. All I'm trying to do is just inform myself that this is a 3D shape instead of just like an outline that I'm trying to copy. So I have like a 3D shape here, a basic cylinder. I have my center line, and notice how my center line is towards the right a bit. Because again, that's what the bicep is doing. Like if we were to make this a cube, the center line is to the right. And this is all we're trying to capture is the direction of this shape. So we can see it's going in this direction. So if I have this isolated shape, again, I want my center line more towards the right because that's the direction of the bicep. And then when I'm wrapping around, I'm trying to figure out how high or how low this shape is. And we can see it's like going down slightly, but we can sort of just keep the center line. So again, don't have to be perfect. Uh, we can just keep it more towards the center, keep that basic shape going. And then when I trace this geometric shape on here, that's when I can go back uh, and like locate the cylinder. Again, I'm trying to find that angle. I'm not making it a perfect straight up one like this. I'm having it tilt downward because that's where the bicep's going. I'm going to grab just a general outline. And I'm even cutting in to the shape. So I know it's going this way. Now I get this angle. And then if I wanted to make up a separate center line, I could have one dead center. Or I could grab, like I said, your dead center line. And then one that's accounting more for the shape of that bicep. So maybe I have one like intersecting or going off at an angle. Or I could build my center line here and then have a separate form that's going off of the cylinder like this. Because all I'm really trying to do, like I said, is find the direction of these plates. And in this example, as I'm drawing this, I think it really would be better to represent it as a cube. Because I think, like I said, you can come up and use whatever shapes you want for body parts. But if I was tackling this, instead of using a cylinder, I would probably use a cube. Because I can see this shape easier as a cube. It helps me see the direction of what's happening. And I think you can see that as well. And it's stuff like that. And I really want to stress, like, we're trying to see a 3D form. We're not trying to make decorations. So like I said, like what you were doing is you were just capturing the outline and then just like painting like random circles over it. And it looks okay. Like if we were to isolate this, it looks like a 3D shape, but it's not to make it look like a 3D shape. It's so that we see it as one because we're trying to learn from our reference. Uh, so really important to pay attention to stuff like that. And that's why I said like if you're gonna use references, it might even be helpful to just have something like this next to you. To have something like this next to you. Because then it's like, all right, when I'm looking at a organic form or a geometric form, I have this information as a reminder, like, hey, I'm not just making these random circles. I'm trying to grab something specific. I'm trying to pay attention to where I can get those edges, where I can make those angles if this was like a sphere coming out, uh, where I can find a shape that's wrapping around another shape. And again, we can switch to a cube because I can see where the side of this bicep is going. I could probably go on an angle like this. So that's probably still not right. So then I would cut in and be like, all right, now I need to cut into this shape, see this sort of angle. And then I'm trying to focus at this point of inside the outline that I'm making, where is that box shape? Maybe it's at too tight of an angle, so maybe it's like, all right, maybe I just use a cylinder instead. And again, this isn't an exact science. All I'm trying to do is just find information that helps me so that I can see this as something that's 3D. And then boom, that helps me more. Now I have a cylinder that makes sense to me. And so on and so forth. And you're just breaking down information like that. And like I said, not only do I want to stress that you should be actively thinking about the shapes that you're using and trying to see a 3D form out of this, and that's why I'm cutting in, even though like you can't see behind the bicep here, these little extra lines that I'm making, The reason I'm doing that is because, again, I want to make sure I'm paying attention to how 3D this is. But on top of not mindlessly doing it and actively paying attention, also reminding yourself that these don't need to be like clean, like graphic design, like perfect shapes. Like they can be rough and messy, and you can overlay like flat, like little weird ones and like little add-ons. As long as you're paying attention to the form, it and you're like actively learning, these don't need to be like clean. We're just trying to pick apart information that's actually usable. So yeah, actively think and give yourself some grace. Because when we're going to study this and when we're not using a reference or when we're not drawing directly on top of it, it's just you and the lines that you make here. You're not going to have the 800 like separate little weird things that you did when you were tracing. If you're studying from a reference and you're freehand drawing, the only way you're going to make something look 3D is through your understanding of those 3D shapes and seeing how you can use what you've already learned to make something presentable. And like I said, only thing you have is your understanding of 3D shapes and where those things are going to go in space. And all of that's going to come down to you finding shapes that you like, finding shapes that make sense to you, and then going back and refining and cutting in. And that's when you can worry about like contours of like uh specifically for this guy in particular, like what little lines I can carve out to then make something that doesn't just look like a Minecraft character and actually has stuff that's going on and looks interesting. But most critically is getting those basic shapes down and actually seeing it in the form. This is to render and understand the anatomy. This allows you to do everything else. Because like I said, if you're not focused on just like the outline, like if I'm not like here, let me try and focus on the outlines of the form. So right now, I'm isolating just the outline of the bicep instead of trying to pay attention to the form. So like if I'm just trying to pay attention to that, uh, I can probably get it fairly well. But you can see it's a lot harder for me. I have to slow down. I have to pay a lot more attention. And this isn't really giving me lighting information. Because already, right now, you can see I've grabbed this muscle here. I've grabbed this muscle here. But if I wanted to attach the forearm, I've made it very difficult for me. Not only have I made it harder for me to do that, but I'm missing a shape here. See this down here? Because I'm not thinking about this as a form, it's difficult for me to address this because this is not only the result of like this sphere being rounded, but this is something that I have to translate into shading later on. So if I'm just focusing on contours, this weird shading areas like this are going to be really difficult for me to address later on when I'm rendering. Whereas if I just did something more simple, even though it's more messy, uh once I'm attaching like these basic shapes, I already know what I have to do because I know that this is just a cylinder. I know that there's going to be a drop shadow here and then the start of this shape is somewhere over here. And like this can just be like a separate sphere that I can build inside of it. And oh wow, look, as I have this sphere that I built on top, I know that I'm look, I don't have the shape here. Immediately, I have that little triangular shape, and I know where that shadow is going to start building off of. I can now see a little Terminator shadow and some occlusion happening over in here. And it just makes it easier to find not only anatomy, but it also makes it easier to find where you should light things as well. So this basic studying of form allows you to learn rendering, and it allows you to learn anatomy, at least easier, in my opinion. And you can see, like, even though I started with a cylinder, this sketch that I'm building off of here looks a lot cooler, if nothing else, than this, like, weird, like, Minecraft, like, block arm that we have. And what's ironic is I tried to start with something more dynamic, and it ended up more stiff. Here I started with shapes that were more stiff, and you can see that it's more dynamic. So really important to pay attention to stuff like that. It takes a lot of practice. You're not going to get in one pass. It's going to be something that you have to slowly build up over time. But it's good to start in the right spot, start in the right direction, and build that stuff one layer at a time. Because I think, like I said, I think if you're trying to jump into bodies and you're trying to jump into rendering an anatomy, you don't have enough foundational knowledge to put that information on. Because maybe you have a really high natural skill for anatomy. Maybe when you jump into anatomy, you're gonna like automatically be good at it. But it's gonna be difficult to use that skill if it's not being placed on a solid foundation. Because you might have a really good rendered like bicep, but if it's in the wrong spot upside down, that's not gonna really do you any good. Like do a entire mannequin of geometric forms. And this is even like stylized and stuff. Again, this is a professional. Don't worry about it doesn't look as clean. Not what we're going for. But have a whole body like this. So when you're drawing from reference, grab like 5 dudes. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm not even there yet. But have like 5 references and cut them up into shapes like this. Have some sort of geometric shape, some sort of cylinder, some sort of 3D shape or cube, something basic that ties it all together. So have the entire body and do like 5 of these for 1 week. And then the next week do another 5 and then just render them. Don't focus on anatomy, but just make shit up. Um, and I think only doing those 2 things, so 1 week of this and then a second week where you do the same thing and then do basic shading over it, you're even though you don't know anything about like shading or anatomy, just having a better figure down, you're gonna be like, holy shit. I increased so much skill in just 2 weeks. It's gonna blow you away, but you do have to be consistent. In 2 weeks, if you did that, you'd be crazy. You'd be a world beater, man. And that's what I'm saying. Like, you could increase way faster than you think if you're just focusing on the right stuff. Yeah. But most importantly, take your time. Uh, this is even though it's less information, it's a lot of thinking. Because again, you're not blindly putting down contours. You're actively trying to think about seeing in 3D. And if you're not used to that, it's gonna take a lot of energy. So again, make sure you're taking your time with it as well. Put your work in, be consistent, but be patient with yourself, because I'm sure it'll at least be a little frustrating.